Well, joining me to pore over all things Brexit is the Daily Telegraph's Brexit correspondent, James Rothwell. Welcome, James. We've had 3 rounds of these talks in Brussels. How do you think things stand?
Well, I think it's probably fair to say that so far, and especially this week, it hasn't gone terribly well. You saw at the press conference yesterday that was in Brussels. There was a very frosty atmosphere. I was there. David Davis usually tries to stay fairly jovial, whereas Michel Barnier is a little bit more reserved. But it was clear yesterday, and the atmosphere in the room was quite palpable, that the two did not appear to have been getting on very well in those negotiation rooms before the press conference. There's been some incremental progress on 2 of the 3 big issues. One of them is Northern Ireland, some small progress there, they said yesterday. Citizens' rights, maybe a little progress. But on the big issue, which is the financial settlement, the so-called Brexit bill, they appear to be in complete deadlock, and they don't seem to be making any progress on that until October at the least.
And it's on that subject, isn't it, that Liam Fox has used this word blackmail today?
Yes. Well, I think Liam Fox is clearly under quite a bit of pressure at the moment to push back. I mean, that was a very aggressive press conference yesterday. You saw what Michel Barnier said. He accused David Davis of being nostalgic for some benefits of membership of the single market, suggesting that Britain wanted to leave the single market but control the single market from the outside. And Liam Fox probably felt the need that he ought to hit back at that and also just try and push things forward a little bit.
Right, let's push things forward here now. Where do we go from here in terms of the timetable and the pace of talking? Because there's a suggestion, isn't there, that they might talk a bit more often?
Yeah, and that was alluded to yesterday. So both Michel Barnier and David Davis suggested that they might need to be having talks, say, twice a week. Or maybe every week. I think that you mentioned the timetable. Before, the EU had said that October was crunch time, so that if we hadn't made what they call sufficient progress on the 3 key issues, then we could not move on to talk about trade. Now it's looking increasingly likely that we're not going to reach that stage by October, which is a problem. The EU has also said...
How much of a problem do you think?
Well, you know, there are kind of 2 scenarios here, right? I mean, one of them is that both sides, and we don't know how they'll do this because it'll be behind closed doors, but there'll be some meeting in the middle of the Brexit bill in particular, because that's the really contentious one, and we might be able to move on. The other option, of course, is that we end up in complete deadlock and we can't move on, and that's a pretty big concern for some people. I think on the whole, though, you know, you've got to remember that the EU is under a lot of pressure as well to push these negotiations forward. There's 27 member states who've got some pretty major business interests in the UK. France is one good example on fishing, but then also Ireland for agriculture. Publicly, everyone says they're united, but privately, they're very worried about this.
And Germany as well, I wanted to mention, because obviously there are elections there coming up later this month, and there are some who think that once they're out of the way, that might help things move forward.
Well, absolutely, and David Davis did allude to this in his speech today, I think, the fact that once the German elections had happened, that there might be some progress. I think that when people know for sure, as is expected at the moment, that Angela Merkel will be the Chancellor, then everyone might calm down a little bit. If people know that it's Angela Merkel representing Germany at the European Council in October, then people might feel a bit more amenable to pushing forward.
OK. James, thank you very much for that assessment.
Thanks for having me.
James Rothwell there at the Daily Telegraph.